It
This
was
is actually symbolic of one of the big challenges we have right now, because I think a lot of our best leaders are in firefighter mode. A lot of our best leaders are in firefighter mode and not in like when you think about the times where like societies leaped forward. And I'm not even talking about American society. Like you think about like the Working Man's Association. It's like a lot of the great thinkers had time to get together, you know,
yeah, man.
and,
Yeah.
and figure things
Self-actualization.
out.
Like I don't even know how many like kid books and like funny stand-ups I would have had if I had the time to breathe. Like
Yeah.
I pe- I like three things more than anything. Like um I love the work that I do. I That's
Yeah.
not what I like doing. You know what I'm saying? I used
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
enjoy it, but now it's so taxing because of the nature of the work. But what I like to do is grow plants, build stuff out of wood, and
Uh-huh.
cook.
Yeah.
And cook. Like, so and when I'm not doing those things, I wanna read. That's it. I just wanna read. Like those and I make my wife say I'm not funny, but I think everybody else say I'm kinda funny. So, like, I like to crack jokes. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
And
maybe
I
that's
don't
what
get to do
makes
that
you
in this work.
I don't know if you don't get to do that. I honestly think that might be that might be a shifting strategy in our work, is
Mm,
I think we tried to be very serious with people for a while, and we're like,
yeah.
"It's all burning down, it's bad," and then everyone for a minute, it worked. Everyone, like, we had a lot of people activated with that narrative, and now I think people are just fucking tired, and people need a nice place to go. They can have a nice conversation and take action. It doesn't sustain you. Like, that energy that everything's on fire is good for a firefighter, but even a firefighter would, like, fall apart. It's just they ran from blazing four-alarm fire to blazing four-alarm fire all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but the problem is, and I think you're right. And also, are you safe right now? Because I know you guys are going through one of the hardest fire seasons in the past 3 decades out there where you are. So I need to ask
Yeah.
that. But also, gotta be honest, bro. We are in. There's a lot of fires to put out, and I feel like that. I think the problem is when we stop putting out fires, or we feel like well, we're gonna take a break from it, we're leaving somebody behind. That frightens me. Like the thought of me not doing what I like, and
I
I
don't
know
think
it's
we need to take a
unhealthy.
break from it, though. I
Yeah.
think that's a I think you're setting up a mutually exclusive choice that's not there. I
Okay.
think I think if you look at some it's not like there wasn't a lot of fucking bad shit going on in the '60s, right? But I think King's framing of love made it easier to step into it. Now, that's not a funny framing, it's just a softer framing, and a lot of people could see themselves as someone who's driven
Mm.
by love and able to step into it. And this moment's a little different than that moment. Like, this is a very, like, content-rich moment. Before you could give, like, one soaring speech and that would echo for 12 months. Now people forget tomorrow. But I think there's a difference between what you're doing and the vibe in which you're doing it. And I think our vibe, understandably, was like, holy shit, screaming at the screen so intense and trying to get people there. And most people are not, most of our, oh no, this is going to happen energy is about what's going to happen or what hasn't been fully realized yet. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so for people that aren't experiencing what we are saying is inevitably going to happen, that can be tough to step into, right? That can be tough energy to like sustain yourself. So I King did it
Yeah.
with
But I and
go ahead.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, and I definitely think there's some truth to it. I think for the demographic I spend a lot of time organizing, Black men, it's not what's gonna happen, it's what's been happening. Like, right? So like it's
Yeah.
almost like did you see the study about the young Black boys from certain parts of Chicago, and I think the study was done like in the 80s and 90s about how uh these kids didn't really have the ability to like be happy
Yeah.
because of so much like negativity. I think it was like some of the kids from PD Green projects before they tore it down. And I think when we look at Black men, the overall experience of Black men in America since forever, uh, I think it's a constant. Not what's gonna happen is what's already happening,
That's a good
and
point.
so yeah, the future for Black men, it's not. It's is it gonna be as bad as yesterday, last year, and my dad's life too?
Yeah, I think what you're doing, which is like we've talked about this before, is validating. This is oftentimes what happens with like national strategy conversations. You're like, we should do X, we should do Y. Oh, but who are we talking about here? That's why organizing specific demographics with specific, animating specific things that animate them is so important. They have different messengers that understand how to reach different demographics. What would you say then? Because you're right. Also, the messaging with King was different if he was trying to activate suburban white families to come march with them than it was, black individuals, right? And so that it's always true, right? Great organizing understands its market and its people it's trying to bring out and understands what will animate them. When you talk about this feeling that like it's been bad. It's been bad for some time. It getting worse isn't really that animating. What do you think is? I was thinking about this. Actually, can I let that bleed into another question I
Yeah, of
was
course.
having? And I was thinking about how, like, in the 60s, we had King, we had Malcolm, we had Fred, we had all these guys. And if you want to go into like on the institutional side, the Kennedys and whatnot, and all of them were killed. And there was this reactionary kind of strategy, which is like we can't have a head. We've got to be kind of headless for for the movement to survive. And before I get to that question, I'm like, what the head of this movement should be doing to organize
Mm,
black men to feel
mm,
excited about a future or like there is more risk in the past. I want to ask you
mhm.
about that strategy. Like how and I don't know even if I'm summarizing it correctly, but so correct me if I'm wrong. But post King, Hampton, Malcolm, there's this decision that the movement was too vulnerable to being beheaded and then losing all the movement. Not a decision from the top, it was kind of like accepted as common wisdom. Can you walk me through, like, what you think has happened since then? What were the upsides of that decision? What have been the downsides, and where do you see it today?
Yeah, I think, so a couple things. Scarcity and also just the sheer number of black men or black people that exist now versus then. Let me say it clearer. There are a lot more black people alive in this moment than it was when King was alive. King is
Mhm.
older than baby boomers. I think he was in what the generation that they call the greatest generation, and that generation, the percentage of that generation that was black was extremely small. Baby boomers, same thing. I think less than 15% of that generation was probably black. Now we live in generations that are both bigger than baby boomers and the greatest generation, talking about millennials and Zers, and they're both also 40% something other than white. So we have more black people in existence in this moment than we ever had before. And I think we've not accounted for the sheer thought of that. Also the lack of I should say institutional hold on people. There's no
Mhm.
institutional hold on from the black church on black people, specifically black
Yeah.
men. And I think that in itself has stripped away what leadership looks like and or redefined. I don't think we have less leaders now. Because and the reason I say that is because if you ask any black man who's the leader that they follow, they're going to tell you that they're their own leader. All of these
Mhm.
brothers believe that they following themselves. I think the problem that created this it's me or nothing is that black men have been starving, have been left out in the cold, regardless of how well they turn up and show up for other people. It is never recognized. So it is created in this demographic that represents the bottom of all or most social markers in this country. So I think you found in them out of the sheer neglect from this country on their needs, the constant reminder from this country that they have a high tolerance for their suffering, and also this country's willingness to use black men as the boogie monster for shit we're not responsible for all the time. And I think that created this desire to kill the idea that we need a King or a Fred Hampton or Malcolm. Um, and I think when we talk about like the '60s and all of those people dying, that pales in comparison to the number of death these people have seen. All of the lynching, you had to read about it, and it wasn't moving. It was pictures. So, and I'm not to
Yeah, yeah, I see what
minimize the black people that were lynched in the '60s. Now the deaths are animated. We see them. Young black men seeing their counterparts and friends get murdered, and nothing happened. We are watching people get employed at different police departments after they kill a 12-year-old Tamir Rice. You understand what I'm saying? So I think the death of those leaders have created this desire to have many leaders. I think though my problem with this idea that we don't need leaders or at least people to guide us is that we miss out on the fact that the truths that science, social science shows us that if you have a leaderless movement, then you have already resigned yourself to no clear accountability. Right. And
Hmm.
when there's no accountability, there's going to be less achievement, less strategies. Also, strategies, also speaking of strategy, they become fragmented when you think about this idea that we don't need leaders. You know, whenever there's, oh, this group is doing this group is doing that, people become fragmented. And I think that's what we've lost in this moment. And it's only when you marry that to the fact that we all are following algorithms that we don't control or don't have our best interests at hand, then we are
Right.
even more fragmented into these little bubbles. And then what happens is the loudest voices, we see this with the number. I change voices for followers. The loudest voices or the brightest blue follower, blue check becomes the voice of something. I see right now that people are naming people without, you don't need any experience to be a leader of people on topics you know nothing about. Stephen A.
Right.
Smith is being interviewed on CNN
Right.
and MSNBC about politics when he barely gets sports right. But this person knows nothing about politics, especially about the black politics, yet he's being called up there simply because of how he shows up. He's a black man. But Walter Cronkite would have never called Stephen A. Smith.
Right.
So I think
Right.
we have this diversity of information, and in that, it created this idea that everybody is a leader, and the algorithm buoys that point by putting people in these silos of information that sounds exactly like what they want to hear.
It's interesting that your point about Stephen A. Smith and attention in general. Attention is almost like the new wealth. In that, like, you would oftentimes have that in society before the social media moment where there'd be rich people in positions that didn't really make sense, and they'd be being interviewed and, and being lifted up and getting awards, and they were, barely an expert, if an expert at all, in what they were talking about. But it was just valuable to be aligned with a wealthy person. In this era, attention is the new wealth in so many ways, especially for the business models you're talking about, like CNN. You could have a better sports analyst than Stephen A. on. You could certainly have a better political analyst than Stephen A. on, but Stephen A. brings eyeballs, and like therefore you see that same sort of trade off on quality for that access. You said something earlier. This no institutional hold. The church not having an
Yeah,
institutional hold on Black
yeah.
communities. When I was running
Black men
ML
specifically.
Black men specifically, when I was running MLK's foundation, I asked him what's the difference between when his dad was organizing and today. And he said today, when his dad was organizing in the 60s and 50s, it was so hard to build a movement. You really had to pound pavement for like years beforehand before you could create a moment like, the Million Man March and whatnot. And that time spent allowed you to identify what the shared talking points are, what they are, credit the movement, who's not involved and just not including them, and building the coalition because attention was so hard to grab. And he's like, now it's not anyone's fault, but now you can just get attention to your point, and you didn't have to do any of that work. You didn't have to, find compromise and build coalitions. I wonder in this moment, if you want this community to come out with a shared message and with a shared understanding on like what they're trying to achieve, if you don't have institutional hold with Black churches, and you don't have the ability to control who gets attention so easily, how do you build a unified movement in 2026?
Yeah, I think as it pertains to this demographic that we're talking about, black men, and it's
Sure.
probably true for other demographics. Once you figure out like what animates those demographics, then and we've done this research and we have this relationship with black men where we're not showing up about a vote, right? So the movement is built around who you are to this people, this demographic you need to move, and to us. And to black men, the organization shows up as truth tellers, right? And in
Hmm.
order to do that, you have to do a few things. We've provided services that brothers need
Yes.
without a follow-up ask. There's been times where we just provide services and there's nothing you need to do. Like here's a shirt, go vote for us. None of that. It's just here's a shirt because you're getting rained on, or here's a couch because you've been sleeping on the concrete pavement. So I think when you think about it in those terms, like, and you build up this muscle, this sinew, the inside of the muscle to be able to have the relationship or the right to ask this question. I also think that it requires a few things, and I think I like to call them 5 or 6 things. The first one is tell the truth. You got to tell the truth about the challenges. If you keep talking about, oh, this candidate is going to change the world, or this issue or this fight is going to end all your problems, the minute it does not, you've lost all your credibility, and you've
Yeah.
also played with people who are vulnerable. That is a dangerous too. So, and we see this a lot in our politics where we say, oh, this is the most important election, or this election is going to change your life, and this is going to fix everything, or this candidate can do that. And that is a horrible tactic
And we
to
do
play
say
with
that.
people like that.
We do say that shit. You're gonna stop hellfire, and you're gonna open us into this new. You're gonna walk us into this new abundant era. Is like
Yeah,
is the promise all the time.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's a fact. And then you also got to talk about, like, just show that improvement is possible, not perfection. And I think that's the problem. We try to go from where black men see themselves and have seen themselves, and they know with listen, with crystal clarity, black men know how this country targets them. You don't need to try to convince them of that, right? What you need to convince them is that improvement is possible, not perfection. You can't tell the black men that, hey, if you unelect this DA, there are going to be no more problems in the justice system.
Sure.
No, you can say we can lessen the likelihood that you're going to get overcharged and over sentenced, right? I think so. Showing that improvement is possible, then present opportunity on how that improvement happens. Make the next step an easy and achievable step. So don't just put it on an election where you need millions of people to change the outcome. How about change it, start with small victories, and those small victories build the trust that change can happen. We can't just take people who've not been in politics and try to make them happy about a presidential election, and they have no understanding of elections in general. And then when they lose the election, expect them to come right back, even though they just lost after you told them this was going to happen. We're going to win by 10. I was on a conversation last night with people, and the guy was arguing with me that you can't tell me what your political. You can't. This is what his exact words were. I don't care about your election outcome results because I seen the exit polls. He
Mm.
was telling me that the exit polls were reliable. And I'm telling
Yeah.
him I have access to the voter files. And what I'm telling you is data from the voter files. And this is what I'm saying.
Mm.
We people that do this work, we are in
I
the
lost you
understanding
briefly.
that people know everything. You said you lost me? Xander, did you lose me?
Mondale, you still there, buddy?
I'm definitely still here. Can the crowd hear me? Thumbs up if you can hear me.
There we go. Maybe it was my internet. I think that's the first time it's been
Yep.
on my end. We hit a
Okay.
milestone
Okay,
in
cool.
our
Because
relationship. Sorry
okay.
about that, brother.
All right.
Go ahead.
Shame on you.
I'm right where I usually am. I don't know what's going on. All right, go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah,
Sorry,
yeah.
brother. Keep going.
Yeah. And I think this is the problem, and this is what happened with the NAACP's. You saw the NAACP call for black athletes in certain in some states to protest. That's
Yeah.
actually asking black men, the most vulnerable people, to do it alone.
Hmm.
We can't ask these demographics that we're trying to organize, these vulnerable people, to do anything alone. We need to be there, and we need to be more exposed at all times than they are, so as to protect these people that we're trying to bring into the fold. Whatever that organizing tool is, you should always make sure that people are not exposed more than that person is asking.
I want to
And I
give
think,
this some. I want to give this some color. Can you give me an example of this done well? When have you seen this done really well? Where there's a less vulnerable population that was partnered with a vulnerable population and showed up in a way that allowed that vulnerable population to be advocates for themselves.
yeah, yeah. I mean, we were actually just talking about Dr. King. Dr. King did not begin or create the parameters for the Montgomery bus boycott. A lot of people think he did, but that was done by Joanne Robinson and other people in that community.
Hmm.
So the people that were being asked were the people that worked for white families. The domestics were being asked to walk or stay off the bus, basically. That
Hmm.
couldn't have happened So you're asking them to risk having to walk 4 and 5 miles, maybe longer, to work for as long as it takes, summer, winter, spring, fall, all exposure, all the weather. Well, those that were less vulnerable were the people who owned cars, who created the
Could
car
drive 'em.
systems, who could drive them to work. So the commitment was there. The commitment was as big for the people who had the resources as it was for those who were not. And I didn't see that. For instance, we watch rich people like we watch rich people like the NAACP as a rich organization come to the demographic of black men. And I got to say this again because this is a serious thing. The demographic of black men that play college football, majority of them are first generation college students. That means nobody in their
Mhm.
family back to the plantation, right? Have been to college. Also, you're asking people who survived the system that was designed to kill them, who have made a position where they could actually make money and bring their family out of poverty because majority of them are from single family or from poor families, right? So you're asking this 19-year-old to sacrifice everything,
Right.
and you have no strategy to protect them. You have no guarantee that you're going to be able to replace this opportunity that they've worked their entire life for. So I think those are if you look at the two systems, the two differences, in a healthy way, the NAACP would have said we got a fund set up. We went to some black billionaires or somebody, and we got a fund that will replace anything that you may lose. Or we have a school and we're going to make sure that the funds are there to match your contract that you would have got at one of those SEC schools. And I think without that, because we didn't see that, we saw young people revolt. Like these people, the NAACP does not speak for the demographic of black people that are least represented by that organization are young black men. So you're an organization that pretend that you speak on this behalf of this demographic, and you don't because they are telling you by their membership or lack of that you don't speak on their behalf. So you're telling them to sacrifice something even though you've not shown up for them. And I think
Mm.
we don't. And then what happened was we watched people, well-meaning people, start trying to manipulate history. So soon after that, we watched the NAACP. We watched even Roland Martin, who I like a lot. We watched them go on their shows with their massive platforms and say things that were kind of like not true, saying that, oh yeah, we saw a college football player in Mississippi say in 2020, take the flag down or he ain't gonna play no more. And that was just a disrespect to organizers because what they didn't tell people was that's not what happened. That's not how that flag came down. They didn't talk about that. Some young people at HBCU schools had been organizing and they had the largest protest in the history of Mississippi in 2020. And so many people came out in front of the governor's mansion that partners from outside of the state and other people had said they're not going to do business in Mississippi unless they change that flag. That story,
Mhm.
so you're minimizing organizing work, healthy organizing work, to push an exploitive model and try to tell people, do what we say or it don't work. And a lot of that do what you say with black men is the reason that they've turned themselves away from institutions.
How did past movements, as you're saying this, the best versions of past movements are service providers. Like the Panthers' best program was the breakfast program. People like obviously
Man,
the
it's
Panthers
shame.
are
You know what it did? You know what
yeah
it did, brother? The
the
breakfast
breakfast
program
program.
from the
Yeah, tell
Panthers
me about it.
shamed the American government into
Yeah,
creating free lunch program.
yeah,
There was no free lunch program before the Panthers. And people think Panthers were just feeding their members or black people. No, the Panthers was feeding all people. Black people, white people, anybody that came to those programs got to eat, bro.
yeah,
And it
yeah.
was it is the predecessor. It is actually the predecessor to free
It's
lunch in our schools, bro.
It's funny. The Panthers forced a lot of things because also California, Reagan passed anti-gun, or I don't want to say
The
anti-gun,
Munford
gun,
Act.
gun
Munford Act.
control laws because the Panthers
Yeah.
are like Reagan, who's like the free market, small government guy. All of a sudden, we got real serious about gun regulations when the Panthers were policing the police. But the policing police, excuse me, and the more like radical activism is what the Panthers are famous for. But to your point, like their staples and how the community got to know them were through programs like the breakfast program and their leadership was from the communities, and if you're in our space, and I mean this broadly, I don't mean like just like black organizing, just like nonprofit democracy leadership, union leadership, etcetera, you oftentimes are running into people that don't necessarily feel like they are one with their constituency, or maybe they were at one point, but it's been a very long time since they were kind of dealing with the same problems and a part of those communities. How would just what how was that possible before? Like, how did the Panthers have enough resources and enough local leadership? And I'm sure there was a virtuous cycle at some point, but how do they even have enough resources to take on what was like a government-sized program, to your point? Uh, how is that possible, and how do we get back to being able to pull those types of things off?
Yeah, I mean, listen. So I'm glad you said that they people remember them for being this radical group with guns, but it actually the Panthers didn't really have that many guns or long time access to guns because even though self defense was in their name, the regulations by Ronald Reagan with the Muffler Act actually stripped them pretty early of guns. So what made them when J. Edgar Hoover called them the biggest threat to America was they were feeding people and they had a 10-point program that was talking about how you get closer to equity. And I think
Mhm.
that was their power. So talking about radicals, I need people to understand that history. But I would say that it was this leadership, but also this investment in people. So Fred Hampton's Panther Party in Chicago looked different than looked different than who he was partnering with than in Oakland or the New York party. And I
Yeah,
think
yeah, yeah.
that 10-point plan as a structure, but the flexibility to have partners that match your need of your community is why it was so successful. And also it stayed true. Also, you didn't have Panthers moving far and far away from communities. A lot of these people now are
Right.
celebrities. I mean, like if you would be surprised the number of people the supposedly people doing work for black people in the South that live in Harlem.
The other
They
thing
got a
you like,
Southern accent. They got a Southern accent, but they live in Harlem.
well, the people you mentioned, I was just thinking about this as you mentioned Fred Hampton. Fred Hampton was 20 years old. Like, he didn't have time to move away from the community. He's only 20. Huey Newton, I just looked up, if you saw me looking down, when he founded the Black Panthers, was 24. And so
24.
there was this youthfulness to their leadership also. I mean, he was in his, I think, 40s, in the 60s when people know Huey, and know, Bobby Seale was, I think, Bobby Seale's 29,
Yeah,
little older, but when they
yeah.
started, by the 60s, they were
He was
older.
a veteran. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, but when they started, it was like it was youth created and then youth led, and they continued to invest in youth leadership, which feels we feel really the right is kind of the only people that have that bench at this point. It's like like really strong conviction young leaders. I mean, they're getting older now. Shapiro and obviously Charlie Kirk passed, but when I think about the left, I don't. We have some folks, but it's not franchised like that was, and I wonder why that is. Why there was so much.
Because yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
it's easier on the right. They have one issue: whiteness. I mean, like
Yeah.
their unifying issue is whiteness. They can't tell me that a unifying issue is no international wars or no intervention, or because we see now that Donald Trump has taken them to war and also possibly about to start a massive even second conflict. The first one we have to acknowledge is Venezuela. The second one is Iran, which is about to even expand. We see that other waterways are being blocked off by the Houthis. So that is not we can't say it's because of conservative family values because my God, we would have some answers to this Jeffrey Epstein thing if they cared about that. They can't say it's around fiscal conservatism because definitely we would have a problem with Donald Trump and his wasteful ways and how he's showing up right now in this moment. So the only
Right.
unifying factor on that side is whiteness, and we have to acknowledge that. And from that point, then we can see why it's harder over there. And I'm not saying that everybody, and I need people to understand this, and they need to hear me clearly. I'm not saying every Republican is a racist. I am saying it is something about you if you are comfortable following a party led by racists.
Mhm. Mhm. And then
And
there's also
and
something
that is
that,
a
like,
fact.
it took me a while to understand, which is I think because because of fucking Hollywood and the movies, it's like you're always fighting back against the guy who says the N word. The systemic racism is so much worse, and people can be pretty passive supporters of systemic racism. They can look like
Yeah.
they just want the community to be safe. Like
Yeah.
that
I mean,
sounds fine. Who doesn't
listen.
want the community to
See,
be safe?
so
You know?
I think and that's exactly right. Because listen, I don't care if people are prejudiced. My problem is when there's an institution that allows you to be prejudiced in a way that it has an effect on me. That's systemic
Yes.
racism. And it is, and you don't even have to wonder if it's more, it is absolutely more dangerous. It is absolutely the reason that we have these inequitable spaces for certain people in this country.
You talked about helping these men understand that things can be different. Things can be better. I was just
Mhm.
reading, dude, if you haven't read this book yet, Timothy Snyder on Freedom. Have you read this book yet?
Not yet.
I'm gonna send you a copy right after we get off the phone. It's so good. Timothy Snyder, a little more woke than I was expecting. I don't know. I probably judged him for his looks, little more with it than I was expecting. He's kind of the man. But he talks about one of the things you have to fight back against is the politics of inevitability. That like the way the world is structured and the way things are the way they're always going to be. And you talked about the need for small wins, for people to see small wins and to see that start to fracture. What does that look like? What are the small wins that you think create a virtuous cycle of people then getting more engaged?
Yeah, I mean, so well, first of all, since you showed the book that you're reading, I need to show what I'm reading right now. I'm rereading this book right here. So, if you haven't read Tama Sakura, you need to read this.
Right on.
That is a powerful book too, and I should send you a copy.
Well, give us one
But
more line then before you answer. What's great about that book? Tell me about it.
it just talks about it. Just it's amazing to see how people would have you believe that what we are fighting now is anew. And this is coming out, this is the 90s, him fighting France around the
Hmm.
same issues about what people should have a right to life, which what it means. It means access to food. It means access to a real, what we call the American dream, the
Hmm.
ability to
Hmm.
provide and also universal health care, and that we are all linked because we are fighting the same structures. The same structures in all of these countries are connected, and we do a disservice when we remove ourselves from Palestinians' fight, when we remove ourselves from the fight of the people in Cuba and other marginalized communities. So I think for me in this moment, it is refreshing to be reminded that when I was born, people had already thought about and fought revolutions for my benefit, even though they didn't know me and are not related or connected to me in any way.
There's so much we can freaking learn from history. I started doing this now every day. I post a history lesson on my Substack in notes. Different things like what the dictator's playbook is, how they were defeated before. Profiles of defiance. I started doing that because you're right. It's such a similar fight. Like I just covered Pinochet on Friday, how they took down
Oh
Pinochet,
yeah, oh
and
yeah,
it
the
was like a
disappeared
lot of
ones,
the
the
disappeared ones,
disappeared
and it was a lot
ones.
of the opposition rallying around a central message, even though they disagreed about a lot, figuring out to like how to put aside the differences and fight those on a different day, and like basically get organized in that manner. And then also the other thing that was really compelling to me is they made Pinochet the bad guy and no one else. Like they talked about the military, like it was captured and they're still okay. They basically created pathways for defection into their movement for everyone else. Like everything else could be forgiven except for Pinochet and his capture of their democracy, and it allowed not only like foot soldiers but like the generals to defect, knowing they would be safe in that defection. You know what I mean? And so it was a brilliant strategy by them. But yeah, we can learn so much. Okay, I want to get back to thank you for sharing that book. I want to get back to the question I asked though, in terms of like fighting the politics of inevitability and showing small wins that then allow for belief that things can change, that allow for more civic engagement. What's that look like?
Yeah, I think like the small victories, the, excuse me, for depend on the demographic. And for Black men, I think the small victories is first addressing what's plaguing them or keeping them fulfilling whole. In some cases, that's us helping them get interviews, hiring them. In some cases, it's us getting them shirts, not literally but figuratively, like clothes, or helping them find stable housing, addressing the problems that are plaguing them first. You'll be surprised when people don't have their basic needs met, what it looks like, what they call a W, what they call a victory, or a win, right? So if you are checking off boxes to help these people meet their basic needs, then the plateau to build healthy relationships start to exist, and from those healthy relationships, then their ability to care about other things outside
Got
of
it.
what they're focused on, and
You're
from
not
there,
even
then
talking
you
about
create
political
citizens.
victories. You're literally talking about
Uh,
victories in their life. You're saying the
yeah,
starting points
political.
create
Yeah,
victories in their
yeah,
life, and then they're like, oh, things
and
can get
and I
better. Period. And
yeah,
I got it.
and I think right. So the political victory. So I tell people all the time that ask from the black men we talk to go vote, it's easy. It's an easy, okay, sure. Bro, if you think about our first year in existence when we had funding, significant funding at Black Men Voter Project 2019, and the work we did all year to reach the black men in Georgia, right? We're talking about brothers who are already registered to vote. Over 900,000 of them, 400,000 plus, 440,000 had not voted in 4 elections. That means these black men didn't even vote for Barack Obama or anybody else in
Mhm.
between there in federal elections. But we just built relationship addressing those problems. We spent a year being like a service organization to them. And then in the first election after that, 2020, we watched an increase of black men by damn near 40%, bro. That's what happened. And guess what? We've not received that level of funding since.
Yes. I was just so wait, you're getting back to another question I asked her. When Christina says I look uncomfortable, this is something I've realized is when I'm looking where I'm really fucking listening, I have terrible body language because I did the movie. Like when I'm kind of spacing out on here, I'll stare, nod, and everything. But I'm really listening. I look down. I look everywhere. I'm writing. We were doing the Epstein bookmobile thing on Wednesday, and my producer Mercedes is like, "Hey, like she pulled me off screen. I was like, what happened? Did my internet go down?" She's like, "No, it looked like you weren't paying attention." I was like, "Fuck, I've got to fix this body language thing when I'm really locked in and like because I'm imagining things, so I'm looking up." Anyways, thank you though, Christina. Montiel's one of my best friends in the world.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Been
yeah. So I'm not. Yeah, I didn't. I
because
didn't.
I'm
I didn't even notice it, bro. I didn't even notice it. Like I'm just.
no,
It's how we. It's how we talk to each other. She also noticed that I'm looking around too. It's like so. Like
dude,
it's yeah.
this goes back to my childhood though. My coach, when I was like playing basketball, my coach would come over the bench. She's like, "I'm not putting you in the rest of the game." I'm like, "Bro, why?" He's like, "Your body language is just terrible." I'm like, I wasn't feeling a certain way. I'm sorry, coach. All right, so I wanted to get to this point around funding though. Like there wasn't a big philanthropy social justice ecosystem when the Panthers were around either.
Sure there
How did
was.
they
Sure there was.
well, big philanthropy in the sense of billionaires funding
Oh yeah. No, there
social
wasn't.
justice movements.
No, there
Where
wasn't.
yeah, no, didn't exist. Where were they able how were they able to sustain the amount of funds they needed to run something like the breakfast program? What did that look like?
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's the coalition. That's what the resilience that exists in people finding a way anyway. Let me tell you a story that's not connected to the Panthers, but is connected to this question. I'm from Halifax County in North Carolina. Right after
Yeah.
slavery, when the Union was pieced back together, allegedly, uh, there was these things called Rosenwald schools. Rosenwald was the CEO of Sears Roebuck back in the day, and he got with Booker T. Washington's Tuskegee Institute. The Tuskegee Institute would design these schools, mostly one teacher, one classroom schools for black students in 15 southern states that were part of the slave states. The county where I'm from is one of the poorest counties, was and is one of the poorest counties in this country. It is the poorest county probably in North Carolina. And Enfield, where I'm from, is the poorest town in that county. Do you know these poor black people, because in order to get a Rosenwald school, Rosenwald would donate half the money and the black community would have to raise or find a way to pay for the other half.
Wow.
We had 46 Rosenwald schools in Halifax County. That is the
Wow.
most in any county in this country. So you take the poorest people then and the poorest people now, and if and the amount of money they spent in today's term is like almost $100 million. People fresh out of slavery, 20 some years removed from slavery, were able
Yeah.
to do that by growing and selling vegetables. So I think that ingenuity, fast forward to the Panthers, is that plus
Sure.
relationships from like the Jewish community too, and their support of the Panthers and some of the work they was doing, and then other concerned white people that saw that we needed to make sure that what the world saw as radical and what the world saw as scary was not actually radical and scary. It was just black people calling for freedom.
Like when I going back to that politics of inevitability and the needing to see wins, I was talking about this in a different context on why millennials feel checked out at times. We haven't seen serious wins in our lifetime. Like if you roll through like the 30s and
Yeah.
40s and
Yeah.
50s, The labor
Yeah.
movement's like adding the weekend, the 40-day
Yeah.
work week, like your
Right.
life's getting better, the middle class is growing, the richest people in society are getting taxed at 85%, inequality shrinking. Like there's all sorts of things that even if like along race lines, it wasn't getting better. You were in society's ability to change, in some ways that allowed for, I think, the necessary and motivation because you're like, okay, there's going to be a return on investment. I'm going to put in the edge hours, but I believe it's possible there'll be a return on investment. If I look at my generation, I'm going to extend it back even further, really like post 1969, for Black men, period. And then it's gotten worse in so many ways. It's gotten worse, or at least your belief it can change has gone down significantly, right? Black wealth, I think, is back to where it was in like before the Tulsa massacre, right? Like it's
It
still at
is.
like
It
and
is.
there's more black people, to your point, in this country than there used to be. They're a higher percentage of the population. So like
Right.
I think that's hard to overcome. I was just talking to one of my best friends that I grew up with, and he was like, "What'll happen if I do this?" And they've seen us do things that look like the 1960s, like we've marched. We we were part of the biggest marches. We marched for the climate. We marched for Black Lives. We marched for more recently for No Kings. And like, does this work? Is this working? What do I do? And so that it's so hard to go over that, get past that cynicism when you haven't seen something in your own lifetime. That's why I talk about the 60s so much, because I kind of draw from that optimism of the 50s and 60s.
Yeah, and I think, and for me, and I think this is I'm so glad. I mean, because like you're talking about people. My dad, I was making this point for my wife the other day that you know her granddad was born 15 years after Harriet Tubman died. You know what I'm saying? Like, so like
Right.
slavery was still a story that people could tell you back then, right? So like these people, you absolutely right. The people, it was fresh on their mind, the abolishing of slavery, and then the ability not to have to drink out of a water fountain that because of a certain water fountain or use a
Those are
certain
pretty
bathroom or
big
sit a certain
leaps.
place. Those are
Enslaved to
massive
not
leaps,
enslaved is a big
right?
freaking leap that like
Right.
is
It's a
motivating.
big leap. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to how we organize and our intentional nature to make sure our victories are tied to quality of life markers and
Yes.
not politics. Because while we can easily make quality of life markers political, it is important to note that we are focused on those quality of lives and not the politics. And what I mean by the politics, I mean the parties in politics. So when we talk to black men, when we talk to black men about like what's going on with them and what they need, and they tell us, and we start addressing it or figuring out, helping them figure out how we get to the solution that they're looking for. That thank you becomes my on ramp to the election, the next election, or how we do that. So it may not be now, but like yo, what's good? We send a yo, what's good text message any moment. Yo, what's good? How you doing? Make sure you're checking in, making sure that situation we help you with is still popping. And then after that, we just start the conversation. If we
Hmm.
had this policy in place, this could never be the case. If we
Hmm.
had guaranteed basic income, this could never be the case. All of these conversations lead us into the politics. And I think at this moment, again, when most of our lives are not lived off of line, most of our lives are lived online, and we're following algorithms we don't control. It is important that anybody that's calling themselves organizers or doing organizing work that are worried about politics of inevitability, then they need to make sure that they're tying the victories to something they can have 100% control over. And we can have 100% control over the issues that are plaguing the people we're trying to organize and how we help them find solutions. Remember, black men don't need you to win for them. They need you to fight for them. And I think this is where Biden lost so many brothers. And people underestimated what that meant. You can't tell me you Xander can't come to me and say, "Hey, I'm going to fight on my daddy's last name like hell to make sure that there's benefits for you. We're going to two things he said. We're going to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act." That's what he told
Hmm.
black men in Georgia. We're going to pass the Voting Rights Act, and if you give me these two senators, we're also going to do some criminal justice reform. He did neither.
Hmm.
Not only did he do neither, he spent the first 2 years not speaking about it at all.
No, he
They didn't. The
deprioritized it.
Democrats,
While we had the
yeah, from
Senate majority, he
2020 to
deprioritized it.
2022,
Yeah.
from 2020 to 2022, Biden literally. The Democrats didn't bring up John Lewis Act until it was election season. They used it as
The
a tool. So black
the
and they
Yeah, the
lost it, and
black
they
community
lost
was
their
truly
majority.
treated like a credit card in that transaction. Like, I mean,
Absolutely.
I was, I was working really close with you all on that, and it was get me elected, I'll do this. Credit card swipe. I'm in. I've got my two senators, and then he tried to be. And this isn't. I'm not like strategy wise. I could see how like these guys get there. He tries to be a bridge builder, and so he passes infrastructure bill, Chips Act, and other things that provide jobs to the South and for southern senators and Republican senators. As that's kind of where he spent his political capital instead of on these priorities, which he
Yeah.
promised these communities. 100%.
Yeah, and I think, like I said, when you bring a people into a space that they're new to, and you tell them this victory is going to happen as soon as this happened, and it
Right.
don't happen, even though they delivered on their end, they go back to what they knew because you
Oh,
just
these
proved
guys are
every
liars.
point. You
Oh,
just, you just, yeah, you just proved every point that the world is telling them about politicians. You just proved it. You just played in their face. And for a demographic that die younger, that has the least amount of resources, the only demographic in this country that can be born wealthy or middle class and still are likely to experience poverty are black men, not even black women. So when you tell that demographic that you're going to play in their face like this with something you just swore on your father's last name, how you think you're gonna motivate them to bring them back out? So I tell people all the
mhm.
time, don't go knocking on black men's door. And I tell black organizations this. You've heard me say it about certain organizations. Don't go knock on their doors if you're gonna be lying to them or just toting the party line because you're making it harder for us to reach them the next time we're talking to them.
So where do you think these organizing groups need to be couched in, these service providers? Like, what is the best, if it's not church groups anymore, right? What is the best container for that relationship? Is it brand new groups? Is it like it's just getting local politicians to basically act as this person and just getting like, small town mayors to be how you are in your in infield where, you're really in relationship with the community. You're not only using their funds, but you're raising private sector philanthropy money to do run programs for them. Like what's the best container for this movement, if you get what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's more like which kitchen drawer are we gonna use today versus what's the best container, right? So
Yeah,
it's not a container, it's a bunch of cabinets. And I think we need to have all of those cabinets fully armed with either silverware or Tupperware, whatever we need for that moment. And I think when we're just looking for
we're
one
getting
tool
deep in the
to
we're getting deep in the metaphor. Go ahead. Keep
these
going.
metaphors getting
Keep
don't
sending it.
this metaphor is getting this metaphor is getting cooked. Like stay with it. We're in the kitchen. Stay with it. We're in
Keep
the
going.
kitchen.
Keep going. Yeah.
We're gonna keep going until it's washed, clean as a dish. No, but but seriously, um, I think we need to make sure that we are properly tooled. I don't think there's one. I don't think, and we
Yeah,
should be honest that it never was one. Right? When there was Marcus Garvey, there was also W. Du Bois, and there was also Booker T.
sure.
Washington, and people should know that it's no straight line to people because you would think Marcus Garvey was more enamored by W. Du Bois because he was what the world called radical, but he couldn't stand W. Du Bois. He wanted to talk to Booker T. Washington and who people thought was passive. And Marcus
Mhm.
Garvey is probably one of the most radical. So I think we have to rethink what we see leadership as, and realize that it's not a guy in a necktie. Right? It may not be a guy in a necktie. It may not be Barack Obama. It's definitely not D.L. Hewley. It's definitely not LeBron James. Right? So I think it's definitely not Jay Z. So I tell people all the time, there are micro influencers that are truly tapped into community, and I think people miss it, like especially for black men. Let me give you a great example. You know what battle rap is. I think you're aware of what battle rap is. Most people don't know that battle rap is completely different than rap like Drake and Kendrick Lamar. Kendrick
Yeah, yeah,
Lamar
yeah.
and Drake are rappers. They're not battle rappers. Battle rappers is a competitive sport where they write down and memorize 3 rounds against somebody. They're gonna say it one time in an arena, face to face, and it's gonna be very aggressive. And then they're gonna forget that verse and never be able to use it again in their
Wh-
sport.
wh-
They
White America
they
was
don't
introduced to
graduate.
battle rap through 8 Mile. That's how White America learned about battle rap was through
Okay,
8 Mile.
yeah.
And
So
the
yeah,
Eminem.
yeah. So that's oh yeah, that's a great way to think about it. That's a great way
Yeah.
to think about it. That's exactly what it is. Um, but it's a real sport. and it's black male dominated, and these people are super influential. If you go to a concert right now, most of the time those concerts, if it's a rap concert, it's a bunch of white people in there.
Yeah.
If you go to a battle rap, the league owners, the biggest league owner is URL, which came from Smack TV. Uh, Smack DVD. That the biggest battle rap league is URL, black male owned. The second biggest, the third largest, and all of majority of the performers are black men, and the audience are black men as well. And it's the same demographic that's tapped out of politics. So we partner with those guys to make sure that they're not saying things that are misinformation or disinformation about our demographic, and we engage them all the time to have healthy relationships. And we have a conference around them and the podcaster community that exists around them. And from there, we let those people tell a message that is based in fact, not false information. And I think until we found out which that goes back to the kitchen cabinet thing. So that
Yeah.
tool, the battle rap tool for black men is one of the drawers. But then there's another drawer that we need too, right? For those who don't see themselves in that space, but they see themselves in the sneaker space or the Comic Con space, and you need to be able to reach those brothers just like you reach these brothers. And I think once you've mastered the demographic and you spend enough time, and I think that's what people are not willing to do, spend the time investing to find out what these people are into, then you can reach them. It is
I
not.
don't think
I
there's
can be honest with
someone.
you when I say this.
Yeah.
I can be honest to you, and I can say this with a straight face. If somebody came to you as a leader in the black community, and the person
Hmm.
that sent them to you was a very wealthy white person, that person is not a leader.
Mm.
And people don't want to hear it. Van Jones is nothing. No, there's no black communities listening to Van Jones. Most of the people, and I would say damn near all of the people, Don Lemon, all of those people on CNN are not leaders or effect. They have no sway. White people like to hear them talk.
I still think yeah, I 100%. I think that's like been a big failing of ours is like being able to connect resources to the community in effective ways with messengers that are real representatives has been a big failing. I still think going back to your analogy though, even if you're in the kitchen, you got all those drawers and you got all those different utensils and wherever else we went with that metaphor. Um, there's still I think a need for someone who's at least and maybe many different needs of people in that kitchen that are a resource for those different groups, right? Like, so great. We want more battle rap influencers to politically engage their community, right? Who's the consulting? Like who's the person that's charged with activating that community along that front? Because if they're authentic, in their battle rap leadership. By the way, 106 in Park was where I watched most of my battle rap. They had a guy. Do you remember Blind Fury on 106 in Park? It was out of
Everybody remember
control.
Blind Fury.
It's out of
Everybody remember
control.
Blind Fury. Oh yeah,
But
everybody remember Blind Fury.
there's still a job for someone to go reach out to Blind Fury and be like, hey, like I know you care about these issues. This is how you can get further engaged or educate. Here's some
Yeah,
info for you. We're here to support you. I still think there's a layer. Like if you look at, I study like the people I'm working against all the time, like the Kochs and Milton Friedman and these guys. They also had that fragmented ecosystem thing going on, but there was like this center of gravity, to their organizations that made sure funds got spent on that infrastructure and to make sure they were constantly advising those different groups in
yeah,
so many ways. So
yeah.
I still
So
think
I and
I
I
still think we need
yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, I listen. I'm a firm. I'm against anybody being a consultant for a demographic that doesn't come from that demographic. So I think the consultants are in the demographic. They just need to be taught how to have those conversations, and manage those conversations. That is not to say that we don't need the resources for well resourced people, because that's the truth. But I also think that there's this narrative that uh, like those who are connected to resources know what should be said or how it should be said. And I think that is true. I mean, untrue. I think we need to make sure that those with the resources get uncomfortable in learning what they don't know, and not taking that as a knock, thinking that, oh, I've been funding the wrong thing my whole life, I'm a failure or whatever. No, suck that up. and write it off as a loss, and let's get busy on what's actual working. And Melinda, you're absolutely right. And I know that Don Lemon hasn't been on CNN for a few years, but what I'm saying is
Where's
to
basis?
black
Where's
men,
Bad
no,
basis?
no, 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 to black men, he's still Don Lemon exists because of CNN, and there's no difference between them. And I think that is an important. His independence does not come, but for his time or his stint at CNN.
Hmm. I One of the things I've seen most successful in that in that kind of conversion from a person going from either funding the wrong things or just being misaligned is like literally field trips, like literally taking people places, right? And I think this is partially what the 60s was so good for is like people had these very empowering experiences being with other people, and being part of something that if you're in community with different groups, it would help that conversion be fun versus shameful, to your point. I took groups of people to refugee camps in Greece. And we would go to the refugee camp to go to my community center in refugee camp, and we would hang out and we would talk about what was going on. And I think people would leave with a very different perspective. We wouldn't be voyeuristic, right? We'd volunteer, we'd do good work, we'd be as respectful as we could. But that contact made it, I think, exciting to be part of a movement. I took people to prisons. I took lots of wealthy people to prisons to literally go to prison. To Five Ventures, you did mentorship of people that were getting out of prison and help them with their business plans and give them a little bit of funding. So when they got out, but that was a useful experience for lots and lots of people. It was transformative for lots of people, and so maybe part of that effort to get more people aligned with communities that aren't their own, to get I forget what you said, non-targeted demographics aligned with targeted demographics in partnership. There needs to be more opportunities like that because we are so stratified by class and race now,
Yeah,
specifically class in a way that we didn't used to. If you read Robert Putnam's Bowling for Columbine or Bowling Alone, I'm sorry, not Bowling for Columbine, that's Michael Moore. Bowling Alone, he talks about how we're so stratified by class now, and political leaning that people aren't having those experiences as frequent.
yeah. And I also think, I think I don't know. I don't know how you are normally on your show with your followers. I hear what you're saying. I like to weave in conversation with the people that are commenting plus what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah,
I
no,
think
go
I
for it,
think
go for it.
yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think you're absolutely right that there has to be some cross pollination between uh, those who are disconnected but are wanting to be a part of the movement in some way, and then with those without, like you said, being very swooping in. And I think that's absolutely true. But that comes with that learning curve is not as steep or as a bigger bend as people believe. I think that work can happen if people are truly trying to learn. And if we remove all of the barriers, all of the gatekeepers who's saying, "Oh, I can't let these people hear or see this because it may turn off or it may interrupt my money." And part of that is because those people are trying to save their importance, even though they're not necessary in the equation. And
Yeah.
what I was gonna say was, what I was gonna say is, this is an exact the savage daughter. Your comment is absolute. Two things can be true. I don't believe any one of us, myself or Xander, came for Don, and the importance of independent media is absolutely necessary. I mean, we're on a show that is independent media right now. I think you're absolutely correct, but I also think that what you heard from this conversation was not the need for black men who are suffering from this experiment called America, who live with their backs against the razor edge of the margin, to be centered, and you are defending someone who has an ungodly amounts of money and resources to defend himself perfectly well. So I think what happens is we find ourselves in that space, especially as black men, when we come into these spaces. That if you say something critical about a tactic that's not working, Don Lemon cannot organize black men. I'm saying that not as an attack on Don Lemon, but as a matter of fact. On his show, I've had this conversation with him when he was on CNN
Hmm.
in the green
Hmm.
room, and I think that that's not a big leap, but I think. when people misunderstand people's role,
Yeah,
uh, then we could get muddied by what the mission is. The mission is always to bring more people into safety and also closer to equity. And I think we should, at least for me, I'm put here to center that point. What is going to get us closer to equity? And I don't think Don Lemon's mission is the same or does that for me. So I'm not coming for Don Lemon in that way. I think for
totally.
me, organizing black men is not benefited or buoyed by what he's doing.
Yeah, I don't know if Don Lemon would even identify as an organizer of black men in the way that
Right.
I think Van Jones is different. I know Van pretty well. Like, I think Van Jones did identify as that for a while, or at least publicly identified as that. And I think what you're saying, what's funny, what you're saying has been validated already in a lot of ways. And you were on this really early. Celebrity culture is almost dead. And you were saying, I think a cycle before that was common wisdom, that celebrity culture was dying. And it's not that people don't know who celebrities are, but they were losing their influence because people didn't feel like they had a relationship with them in the same way they were getting used to feeling like they had a relationship with even say me, right? Like I'm here, I've got a lot less followers than Mark Ruffalo, right? But I'm responsive. We talk to the chat, like whatever. You can feel like you get to know me. I'm off script all day. I'm never on script. I have no product outside of this. And so I think all you're saying is like that the who is influential in people's life has really shifted a lot to being something that is like kind of on the nose representative of them, is one of them, and speaks their language and is trusted like that. Where trust is and where we follow people has shifted dramatically. And that's been validated. That's not just in black men, like that's been validated across the spectrum. There's way less if I rewind like 6 years ago in the pro-democracy space, there was a lot of money invested in organizing celebrities. And those projects are not
Yes.
really
Yes.
considered, minus the Committee for the
Yeah.
First Amendment, who's fighting for free speech, which is happening on the airwaves. And so they are the target demographic, in that sense. And that's a great,
Yes.
great place for them to play and fight. There's not as much money spent on that writ large because people have realized that they don't, just because they have that high count on Instagram, they got 20 million followers or 25 million followers or whatnot. They're not influential in the ways that
Yeah.
they
I
used to
think
be.
I think in our first conversation, in our first interview, you and I had this conversation in a different manner. It was about Kanye West, and I said black men don't listen to Kanye West. They listen to his
Yeah.
music. They don't listen to
6 years
Kanye
ago.
West. He's not a
Yeah.
6 years ago. I was telling
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
that he's not gonna motivate black men to do anything.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah. Just to foot stomp that down, but you're not saying these people aren't influential. You're just saying they're not influential to this demographic. That's not that they don't have a role to play. That's just not who they. That's not who's listening to them for the most part.
Yeah.
I want to bring up one more thing, and maybe I should save this for another day. But one of the I think, unfortunately, going to a rough public high school and growing up without a father, I had a lot of my friends were black and brown, just because those were two things we connected on. Going to being at that school and being raised without a father, unfortunately. And I played basketball, so I got my black card early on because of those things. But I remember so many of my
Xander's got a black
friends.
card.
Not the
What?
one that gives you a lot of credit, unfortunately.
What?
Not that one. But but my my buddy Daryl, I remember him, his dad was locked up our whole childhood. And he said he basically took it, he was mad at his dad, like all the time for being locked up throughout his
Mhm.
childhood. And
Mhm.
I brought him to meet with my friend Ebony Underwood, who ran something called We Got Us Now, which is it's an organizing group for the children of incarcerated parents, right? And Daryl didn't really have a sense of like the systemic nature of the justice system. I mean, he knew like the cops fucked with us all the time. He knew broadly, but like I think he didn't understand like how meticulously it had been crafted to impoverish and then arrest people like his father. And there's a lot of I found this to be true, but expand out from there. There's a lot of individualism in the black community. And I think you said this at the top, that if you have an individualist narrative, then the system isn't like something important to craft in so many ways. Have you found that? I found that true with my friends, at least. Have you found that to be true? And like, how do you take that next step? Actually, let me just stop there. How do you react? Like, what do you think we should do about the individualism narrative?
Well, I mean, it's not unique to black people, right? I
Yeah,
think
it's true.
it's just it's elevated in black men because of how how far away from safety we are. You know what I'm saying? So you see this
Yeah.
person who's out in the ocean that's drowning, and there's tons of lifeguards pointing at him or headed in his direction, and he thinks he's the only way, his only way to the coast is swim past them, right? And I
Yeah.
think that's the black man thing. I think though, I mean, you hear all Americans talk about this self-made, this idea of self-made when you're riding on public funded streets or technology using technology designed by taxpayer dollars. So I mean, the self-made idea is part of the American lie. What I would say is how do we address it? It's simple. I think it's innately in us. We are people who form relationships to survive. We
Hmm.
always have. I mean, the story I told about the Black Panthers and linked it to the 46 Rosenwald schools in my county are not separated from where we find ourselves now and how we group ourselves. I think what happens though is in this moment of bubbles, you have to be in somebody's bubble to be influential to them. And I think
Mm.
unless someone has let you inside of their bubble, T-Mobile started this early on. What they had their fave. You remember that?
Oh yeah.
Way back, it was a T. Are you in my fave? It was Charles Barkley. Are you in my fave? And
And
so I think
MySpace.
if
MySpace had the top 8 going for a while too.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So if you think about that, if you're not in those people's spaces, if you're not in that space with people, then you're not really going to have influence in them, or somebody in their space introducing your thought or your way of thinking. It's not going to really land, regardless of who said or how many times they say it. And you can't social pressure them into doing anything or believing anything because it didn't come from that space. So that's why I try so hard to make sure that when I'm talking to politicians about how they engage this demographic, or when I'm talking even to black men who are successful, like D.L. Hewlett and those guys, what I'm trying to tell them is you can't do that. You can't come at black men and say, if you don't vote for this black woman, you're sexist. That
Hmm.
that that's absolutely ridiculous thinking. That is not to say that sexism doesn't exist. It exists in all demographics of men. But I'm saying there's no extra amount of sexism in black men against black women. What I am saying though is you need to really look at black men exist in one space that is unique to any other demographic in the world, right? And I think I said it to you before, Xander. When black men got the right to vote, demographics started to try to kill them in new ways. The Klan was built, the lynching happened. We're
Totally.
their only demographic. We're the only demographic when we got the right to vote. Death started becoming a thing for us, public death. And nobody has talked about, everybody talks about, oh, your ancestor died for your right to vote. When everybody else got the right to vote, they didn't get killed for exercising that right to vote. So no one knows what that says, or no one has studied the triggering nature of telling black men, oh, someone died, because black men would tell you that we're still dying, not just for the right to vote, for the right to exist.
Yeah, I mean, and also look, the first time around, the right to vote triggered the Klan. The second time around, we got mass incarceration, and
Yep.
we've got like this
Yep.
infrastructure. You have the Federalist Society that's launched, right? So
Yes.
like you have
Yes.
all this right wing infrastructure that gets launched on the heels of that progress as well. That's considered that made a lot of elite American society feel threatened, and they built the infrastructure to attack, reinforce, I guess, their elitism, pull people away from jobs, to incarcerate poor people. Yeah, so you've actually seen that like cycle twice. Once post slavery, and then again on the heels of the civil rights movement that reinforced the right to vote and access to jobs and all that. And so we're dealing with, in my opinion, mass incarceration is sits just behind slavery and the genocide of the indigenous people as like our greatest crime, and it's ongoing. To your point, like
Yeah.
you're not,
Yeah.
you didn't get killed in the past. You currently we have 2 million mostly black and brown people
Yeah.
incarcerate 10 million that cycle through the system. I don't know if it's 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 black men are incarcerated at some
One in
point.
three will
One in
experience it. One
three.
in three.
1 in 3. You've got right now we're talking about fighting for our Bill of Rights. But if you look at how, this is coming from kind of my years in the criminal justice system, if you look at how and the average black man cycles through our justice system, we have cash bail, which is ridiculous. So it means you're not free until
Debtor's
you're
prison,
convicted.
which
You have
should be
debtor's
legal.
prison, which is supposed to be illegal. You meet with your public defender for an average of 3 minutes. 3 minutes, right? You are
The day of your trial.
the day of your trial, so you don't really have right to an attorney. You are oftentimes coerced into accepting a plea deal so you don't face these incredible sentences, so you aren't judged by a jury of your peers because you don't go to trial most of the time. You just take the 2 years instead of the 10 because you have no faith you'll not get the 10 because you have a public defender that met with you fucking 3 minutes, and that's the entirety of your experience. So that whole Bill of Rights that we talk about that we're
And
for
you
now.
have a prosecutor system that will punish you for trying to take them to court. Like time to go to
Yes.
trial. If you go to trial, you've already been overcharged. You already know the stats of how you are over sentenced. So yes, yes. So yes,
And
brother, yes, and
now you're
yes.
facing mandatory minimums at trial because you're facing these football numbers, as they say, that you're facing now. So, anyways, I think it's this. They've done a good job pushing most of our justice system into a corner of society that people don't see. And now I think Trump is showing us what that looks like at scale or in different communities that don't usually experience it. Like, what do you mean Renee Good was trying to hit that officer? No, no, she wasn't. Yeah, that happens all the fucking time. That these officers escalate the situations and then claim self-defense. And so, to your point, anyways, I'm like going off because obviously I'm very passionate about this fucking issue. But um, yes, like that is one of the great crises that we're currently living through. And we used to say in the justice system, or sorry, justice reform space, if you're wondering how you would have behaved during um
Anytime.
slavery
Slavery,
times,
the
if you
Nazism,
Nazism,
any
how are you
in the
behaving right now?
it's
And
yes. Yes. Yes.
And I took that seriously. I took that call seriously. But I think a lot of people, to be fair, you have different experiences that wake you up to us. And that one of my greatest hopes for this moment is we don't leave this Trumpism moment when we emerge victorious, which we will. We don't leave going, great, we solved the problem. You know, the Renee Goods of the world aren't going to get shot anymore. We say, man, now that we've seen the conditions in an ICE detention center, now that we saw how an ICE officer behaves to the general public, we shouldn't tolerate that anywhere in our society and make sure to stomp it out, not just at the federal level, but across counties and cities
Do
throughout
you
this.
remember? Do you remember? Do you remember, Xander? And I know we got to wrap up, but do you remember
Yeah. So
when
we probably should have like time with held that
it's
specific.
all good?
We'll just keep going.
But do you
But
remember? Do you remember when the January Sixers were locked in DC jail, complaining about
no,
all the problems, the smell, the no
no,
working
yeah,
water, the air
I do.
conditioning not working, and then they got all of these problems fixed, and they even moved them to a better location than the people, the black men who make up 90+% of the people in DC jail, who have been complaining about these same problems, who have died from pneumonia,
Yeah, yeah.
and they've done nothing about it. And it's like, yeah, so
That
like
that does help.
let's wake up. Let's let Donald Trump's
Yeah.
fight against wokeness wake us all up to a point where we are never able to sleep on these issues ever again for any community, whether they look like me, you, or Renee Good, or uh Alejandro Chavez, whoever. Let us all be safe because our government is working for all of us, for the benefit of all of us, so that we all can have a more righteous life. Can I
Mhm.
do a self plug real quick?
Yeah, plug. You're supposed to plug. That's the whole point of this. You plug. I'm saying I love you, and I want
I
more people to know you. So plug.
Yeah, yeah. So, and I don't really have a big plug. I just want to say this. It's like 314 people in this right now watching us, and probably more because I think I got a lag. All of you all should follow me on Substack. It's that easy. I'm in the process of becoming more frequent on Substack, and also Xander and I are going to do this every Monday, unless he's on vacation or I'm traveling to a point where I have no signal. So let's make sure that you guys can know you guys can know where I am. Everybody should I should have 314 new followers at least by the end of this call. And I tell y'all what, Xander and I won't always agree on strategy, but we're always commit to being honest and having these conversations out loud.
Including, it sounded like Mondale was doubtful if I should have a black card or not when I brought it
I'm
up.
s-
He might rescind.
I was like, Xander got a black. Hey, you know what? You know what I said, right? You know what I was thinking in my mind? Do I need to call Martin Luther King III? Do I need to call Phil? Do I need to call Desmond? Do I need to call Desmond?
So you called them. So they were the ones that told me I had it. Maybe it's been
Listen,
rescinded.
I'm like, who? I'm
Rescinded.
thinking about all the black men that would have. I'm like, who said that to him?
I'm gonna walk into my living room. There's like 8 of you in there. It's like we've been meaning to have this chat with you.
Hey, look, you're gonna get off this call and you're like, damn, I don't have a black card anymore. I should have kept my mouth closed. See, the
Dad,
secret of having a
why'd you
black
do that to me?
Xander,
Yeah.
the secret of having a black card is not talking about it.
I fucked it up. I told the feds I'm out. All right. All right, brother. Good to see you, man. I'll see you I'll
Peace
see
and
you
blessings.
before Monday, but we'll be on here
Yeah.
on Monday.
Thank you all. Thank you all for tuning in. I appreciate it. Xander, thank you so much for the invite, brother. Peace and blessings.
All right. Love you, buddy. See ya.
Love you back.